there friends, Rebecca here, the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and Elwing and I are here today to talk to you about a couple books that we think are really very special, and they actually have the same theme. Even though the characters are different and the storylines are different, the theme of both of these books is very similar, and it is actually that theme that we are going to be talking about with you today. So we're about halfway through September, a little bit more than halfway through September. The month is just flying by, or at least it seems to be, to me anyway. And there is a week every year, a national week that happens usually in September that is very, very important. And that is Banned Books Week. Now, it's generally the third week in September every year. This year, for whatever reason, it's actually been moved to the first week in October. But that's okay. I want to talk about it now a little bit early and ahead of time anyway, because then that way it can get you thinking about some of these ideas, thinking about some of these books, and give you ideas of maybe something that you would want to read, possibly these two books that I'm going to talk about today during Banned Books Week. So what is Banned Books Week? So this is a celebration about the freedom to read. Basically, it's a week that celebrates booksellers, publishers, teachers, librarians, and readers just like you. And it celebrates the fact that you have the right to read what you want to read. And the reason we have this week is it started in the 80s, and it was in response to a lot of the issues about books being challenged and banned throughout schools and libraries. Now, it's really important now more than ever, because in the last couple years, it's gotten a lot worse. Across the country, this is not just limited to one or two states, it's happening across the country, and it is basically a nationwide phenomenon. Between the months of July 2021 and June of 2022, over 2,500 individual books have been banned. Now that's just, we're still working on the numbers for, even more recent, but just in that span of time, that's how many books have been banned or challenged. And it's growing in number, right? It just keeps rising, it keeps rising. It has been estimated that about 4 million students, just like you, have been affected by these book bans. So this is a really, really important issue, right? So what can you do about it? You're like, well, I'm just one person. I'm just a kid, or I'm just a teen. I don't know what to do. Well, the first and most important thing you can do is to just be aware, right? To be aware of some of the books that are being banned, to be aware of Banned Books Week, and just pay attention to stuff like that. So here are two really, really good books. I thought instead of talking about a couple books that have been banned, I want to talk about books that deal with book censorship and book banning, because I think it might help you understand the issue a little bit better. And it's really great. They're really great reads coming up into Banned Books Week. So the first one I want to talk about is Attack of the Black Rectangles by Amy Sarig King. Attack of the Black Rectangles. Now, Amy Sarig King writes also under the name A.S. King, and she writes a lot of young adult books that are absolutely fantastic. This was her first book that I read for younger people, and I really, really liked it a lot. It was not very long at all. Actually, both the books I'm talking about are not very long, so they're perfect. I know we're just starting school a few weeks ago. We probably have a lot going on, but they're not really long, texts that are going to take you forever to read, right? So this is about a boy named Mac who is starting school, and they are in his class. They're getting ready to start reading The Devil's Arithmetic, which is a book by Jane Yolen about the Holocaust. But when they start reading it in class, they realize that their copies of the book have words blacked out, kind of like what it looks like here on the cover. Certain words are blocked out and crossed out, and they can't read them. So reading a book that is like that, you could imagine, feels very jarring, and it pulls you right out of the story. And what you're doing is you're paying attention to what's being taken out rather than what the story really is about. Now, Mac is the kind of kid who his dad is always telling him not to make a fuss, to be quiet, leave stuff alone. But Mac finds that he can't in this instance because he knows this is wrong, and he knows that he has to do something. So he has to work with his friends to try to confront who is doing this and to try to appeal to the higher authorities in the school to get this answer fixed. So I really, really liked this book a lot. And I had heard of The Devil's Arithmetic before by Jane Yolen, but I haven't read it. And reading this book definitely made me want to, because it sounds like it's just an absolutely phenomenal book. But this is a really great book that talks about the ways in which you as a young person can handle situations like this if they ever arise in your school. And again, the main thing is, like I said, to be aware of what's going on, knowing what's happening, and, being brave enough to take a stand against it. So that is Attack of the Black Rectangles. The next one is Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. Ban This Book. I really do love this cover too. Alan Gratz has written a lot of really fantastic books, so I was really excited when I found out that he had written a book about specifically book banning and censorship. Now this one, the main character goes an extra step that I think is a little bit more fanciful than in the other book I talked about, but it's still really fantastic and really great to read about. So basically, Amy is the main character. Amy Ann is the main character of this book. She is very quiet. She doesn't speak her mind ever. She thinks the things in her head. She thinks of the responses that she wants to give to people when they ask her things, but she doesn't say them out loud. She just goes along with what people are asking. Her parents think she belongs to these different after-school clubs, but she doesn't. She just stays in the library and reads. She feels kind of overwhelmed at home with her two younger sisters, and she never speaks up against anything, ever. Well, all that changes when her favorite book in the library, The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankenwheeler, I think is what it's called. I think that's the name of the title. The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankenwheeler. Yeah, I had it right. So that book, which is her favorite book in the whole world, has been pulled off the library shelves because a parent has made a complaint about it. She's read that book 1,000,000 times. She doesn't see that there's anything wrong with it. But the teacher or the parent in question is saying that it is allowing kids to be rebellious and to not listen to parents and teachers. So at a school board meeting, this book and a few others have been pulled permanently from the library. Now, Amy has gone to the school board meeting and she has a speech and she's getting ready to talk about it, but she freezes and she can't do it. She loses her voice in the moment when it's the most important. So she's very upset after the meeting. She knows that the book is going to be taken out of the school. So she decides to do a really rebellious act. She decides to take matters into her own hands, and she gets copies of books that are not available now in the library, in the school library, and she is keeping them in her locker and having people check them out like it's her own little mini library, her own little mini banned books library. How cool is that? So she is checking these books out to people who want them in her own little school locker library, meanwhile trying to keep this from the teachers, trying to keep this from her parents. And, this is a really big deal, especially for her, because like I said, she never ever speaks up. She never speaks up and she never goes against what people are saying. So for her to be doing this is a really big deal. And whether she gets caught or not, whether, her purpose is finally, comes to fruition, that these books get back into the library, you'll have to read it to find out. But this book is absolutely fantastic. And like I said, that whole idea is maybe a little bit out of the realm of what you might be able to do against book banning, but it's still really, really cool to read about. Ban this book. So those are the two books I want to talk about today. Like I said, they both really deal with the issue of book banning and censorship, which, like we talked about in the beginning of this video, is a really, really big problem right now in this country. So it's really, it's a good idea to read about these issues and learn about them, especially reading about them through fiction, right? So you can step into the lives of these characters and experience what is going on with them. So they're really great books. I absolutely highly recommend them. You can get both of them at Farmington Community Library. So please do that if you're interested in reading them. And also thank you so much for watching, friends, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day.